Alright, this is Bush number 2, about Bush's war record. Bush's AWOL record, more like it. Well, anyway, here we go. Obviously, go to Bush number 1 so you can get the beginning of my blog, because it's going to be 1, 2, 3. I've got 3 pages here about all the times he was AWOL, all the times he was failure to report FTR, and all the special treatment he got. So we're going to continue. So I left off with the fact that in order to even be in the Texas Air National Guard, you had to have 3.5 to 5 years of active duty flight time in order to even be considered to be in the unit. In order to be on that list of 1,000 soldiers that he got pushed in front of to be in that unit, all those people had already been enlisted in the military for 3.5 to 5 years. So they had already done their time. So Bush not only got pushed ahead of 1,000 service members who was in line for that, he got pushed ahead of 1,000 service members who had done at least 3.5 years of active duty enlisted time in the military. And he sent one of them to go die in his place. So, done before, and mind you, that had never been done before, and it's never been done since. So you can ask yourself if that's special treatment. When the application, and this is, mind you, this is all stuff that is on paperwork. Mind you, literally more than 3/4 of what Bush is supposed to have, all his FTR reports, all his medical records, because he had his yearly physical exam for his flight, which after his 4th year, after he refused to show up for his flight physical, he was grounded. It means that he was told he couldn't fly anymore. Of course, he got busted for possession of cocaine 3 weeks prior to his 4th year flight exam. He got busted for possession of cocaine in Texas, so that would make sense why. And mind you, they were doing 2 years prior to his 4-year mark, where he was going in for his flight physical, is when they started doing drug testing. So he knew that they were going to be doing drug testing. So I think that's suspicious. So if he was AWOL, which he was, there's a very likely chance that he went AWOL just so he wouldn't piss hot on his drug test, which is just even more sickening. When his application asked if he wanted overseas assignment, he checked the box, do not volunteer. Which, I mean, can you really blame him? Well, that's not true. I volunteered at the age of 17 for Army Infantry, and I served 2 tours. And Bush was older than me, and he went out of his way to not get deployed. So I really can blame him. But I mean, if that box was there, I might have checked that do not volunteer too, if I had a chance of getting into, because Vietnam was certainly a different war than Iraq and Afghanistan. When this application, blah, blah, Bush had 6-year obligation. How it worked was, in order to be in this unit, you had to sign an agreement saying you had a 6-year obligation. And in order to be in this non-deployable unit, you had to agree to serve for 6 years. Bush did not show up for a single duty assignment, including didn't sign up for his exit paperwork, for his discharge paperwork being processed. He didn't even show up for that, which is I couldn't believe it. All the shit that I had to go through in order to get out of the Army, and Bush didn't even have to show up in person. It's like literally a 6-month process of at least 3 to 4 days a week of appointments and physicals and everything in order to out-process out of the Army. He didn't even have to show up. So Bush not only didn't fulfill the last 2 years of his 6-year sentence, he didn't even fulfill his original obligation. So he broke contract. All right. Non-deployable unit, he served less than 4 years. Bush refused to take flight physical exam when drug testing was required, which led him to being grounded. I already said that. Means he couldn't fly, so he got his... Once he was in the unit, obviously, he got trained to fly. But that had never happened, to receive all that training once you were already permitted to be in the unit. Because these people, the Texas Air National Guard, was supposed to be the best of the best. So these are the top gun guys that were supposed to be stationed at home in case somehow the Vietnamese or Soviets or whoever it was came over and started flying planes into the U.S. and started bombing. These were the dogfighters that were going to go out there and defend us. And if that had happened the day Bush got assigned to the unit, Bush wouldn't have been able to fly, because Bush had never even flown a fucking crop duster, yet a fucking fighter jet. So, and after Bush twice did not show after written orders to arrive in person. This is after his 4-year mark. So these are the only 2, and the reason I say twice, because the only 2 paperwork that I found that I could verify with multiple different sources showing that he did not show up when he was supposed to was twice in 4 years. He was supposed to show up essentially like once a month at least, and he somehow was only at once a month he was supposed to show up for that entire 6 years, and somehow he was only asked to show up one time per year those last 2 years. So everybody else was literally told to show up 11 times more often than he was, and they managed to do it, and he never managed to show up at all. So there's two sources of paperwork, which is his FDR reports. And remember what I said about my first blog is that FDR works in the Army is if you should fail to show up for a formation, whenever that is, for him it would have been his fucking flight physical was the first one he disappeared on. That they actually wrote he disappeared on because he grounded him after that because that's a requirement for flight physical. He wanted to get out of the drug testing. These are two paperwork you can still see today that his FDR paperwork was started. It means they stopped his pay, which means they said on the paperwork, George W. Bush did not show up when he was supposed to. We are calling him FDR, failure to report. It says it right there on his paperwork, and we are stopping his pay. Now, 24 hours later, the AWOL paperwork should be put in, showing that he was a deserter. Because if you're AWOL at a time of war, which he was during those 6 years, well, those last 2 for sure that we can prove, because all his other paperwork is fucking missing. Wow, what are the chances of that? Somehow they managed to put in that FDR paperwork, but 24 hours later they forgot to put in the AWOL paperwork on either of those. So my guess is, and of course I have no way of showing this, my guess is the Army, of course, did the paperwork and turned it in, and then somehow that paperwork disappeared. Because the Army, even though it's political, and they had his buddy Sidney Edgar, longtime family friend Sidney Edgar, called Brigadier General James Rose, who sat on the 3-man senior officer board that gave him his commission as a second lieutenant, and then less than a year later gave him his promotion as a first lieutenant. I'm guessing that guy went in there and assisted in the destruction of those documents. Alright, 25,000 AWOL, flight inquiry. The fact that there was never an inquiry. Oh, here we go. This is the important thing. There has to be an inquiry board. If someone fails their flight physical, not only the fact that they didn't show up, but what's so important about the flight physical aspect of this is that he's there specifically for his ability, or really lack of ability, to fight. That's why those soldiers at the Texas Air National Guard are there. So they had to make sure at all times these soldiers were physically, mentally, able to fight, not to mention present, which is a big part of being able to fight. You have to be there in order to fight. So whenever he didn't show up to his flight physical on his 4th, 5th, or 6th year, there was never an inquiry board, which is against Army regulation in and of itself to not have an inquiry board, as an inquiry board has to be convened within 30 days of someone failing or a no-show for their flight physical. But there was never an inquiry board, but no special treatment, right, according to what Bush says. Alright. No preferential treatment. Never has there been a case before or since that there was not a convening of a board when someone failed to appear or someone failed the flight physical. Never before and never since has that ever happened. On September 5th, 1972, 3 months after request to an inactive Alabama unit was denied. So in 1972, Bush tried to get to an inactive unit. So apparently being a non-deployable unit where he just had to show up once a month, while hundreds of thousands of other soldiers were going off to fight and get maimed and give up large parts of their sanity, if not the whole thing, and more than 40,000 dying. That wasn't enough for him. He wanted to go to an inactive unit, which means he would be assigned to a unit that actually didn't exist anymore. So to serve in a non-flying unit, it was the 187th Tactical Reconnaissance Group in Alabama. According to testimony by base commander, this is the base commander where Bush was serving, base commander Lieutenant Colonel Kenneth Lott. This is the direct quote that he testified. To my knowledge, he never showed up, nor was there any record on his military history of any in processing, nor any record at the Alabama base of him ever being there. That is a direct quote. The direct quote is, to my knowledge, he never showed up. And then the later reports went on to show that there was no record in his military history that he even showed up. So, AWOL again, Bush did not appear to his duty station at Ellington Air Force Base from May 22nd to June 7th. 9 days he was supposed to appear, again failing to appear for a written order twice now within 1 year. 2 times within 1 year, he was AWOL. Failing to appear when his written order was told to, that's AWOL.